Hi, I just wanted to say thanks for taking the time to look at our new Survival Guide for Adult video series. We have 5 new shows plus a 100-page leader discussion guide, which allows you to use this series as either a 5-week program or as a full 13-week curriculum course. Now at the moment, we have 47,000 churches across North America who are using one of our video series. As a small nonprofit ministry, we have a very simple purchase evaluation program, and here's how it works. Number 1, we send you the videos and the leader discussion guide to examine for 10 days. Number 2, if you decide to show the series to your group, we have already enclosed an invoice for your convenience. And number 3, well, if after 30 days we have not heard from you at all, we'll assume you've decided to keep the material and we will simply bill you accordingly. Please don't hesitate to give us a call if you have any questions. Now on with today's show, Why Do Bad Things Happen?
Firefighters tried to save this man, killing the 5 passengers, and
the search for survivors is not yet over.
People shot down brutally. Our whole life is down there underwater.
This is the murder weapon. More than 3,000 have been killed.
I just don't understand why he lets those things happen.
Wendy Welch.
And I'm Willy Welch, and welcome to a survival guide for adults.
Yeah, today we're going in search of answers to a question people have been asking, well, since the beginning of time.
I know what it is. How come the Red Sox can't win the World Series?
No, that's not close.
Oh, I know. Can God make a baseball so big that even he can't throw it?
Willie, you've got baseball on the brain. No. The question we're asking is, why do bad things happen to good people?
What happened in World War II at the concentration camps.
The devastation of the war in Bosnia.
Like innocent children dying.
Destruction of the rainforest and things related to the environment.
Abused children.
The hunger that's going on in the world, or why maybe a 9-year-old boy might be caught in crossfire and shot.
When I get to heaven, the first thing I'm going to do is ask God, why did that happen to me?
I hate to even pick up the newspaper anymore. It's so depressing. Famines, terrorism, AIDS, murders.
Oh, I know, but what about the stories behind the headlines and the personal ones, those real tragedies that affect the mothers and the fathers and the children?
We're going behind the headlines right now to listen to 2 separate stories, Carolyn in Texas and Suzanne in Tennessee.
These are stories that make everyone ask, why?
We have been married 7 years. And at the time, we had both children. I was in college, majoring in nursing. I had went back to school. During this duration of time, he was feeling really bad. His chest was hurting a lot. He just wasn't himself, He was referred to a pulmonary specialist. The pulmonary specialist decided to give him a biopsy. So they gave him the biopsy on a Thursday, and then they called him the Monday, and they told him it was lung cancer.
Yes, this is Carl.
I just went to pieces. I was crying. I had no strength. I just had to sit down. I felt like I was just going to fall. He went through feeling very depressed, very unhappy. Lots of questions he would ask me. I tried to do what is right in life. I tried to be a good husband. I tried to serve God. I just don't know what else that I should have done. He would just always, why me? Why come I won't be able to be here to watch my kids grow up? I just don't understand. We went ahead to the oncologist, and so after he viewed the reports, and he said, we can't operate now. He said, there's no need to operate since it has spread to the bones. So he just leaned back. He just leaned his head back, and the tears just started flowing. He just cried and cried. So he said, "Why me? Why me?"
We lived here in East Tennessee for about 5.5 years, and we raised 3 children here. My husband is the pastor at First Baptist Church in Andersonville.
Lord, I pray that your spirit will have control of this service.
Joel idolized his daddy. They spent lots of time together. They always bike rode together. That morning, Don had done a funeral. He thought he'd stay home for a while and ride bikes. It was a Wednesday, so he knew he had to go back to church.
I was here at the church, and Suzanne called, and she was expecting Don to get to the church, him and Joel, their bicycles.
They said no, that he hadn't arrived yet.
That's when I got Suzanne on the phone, and she was sharing with me that they had left on their bicycles, but they had had enough time to get there.
And not too long after that, I heard an ambulance go up the road, and I called Suzanne.
And I kind of listened for it, and I didn't hear it. And I knew I would have heard it if it had gone past my house. So then I just put my shoes on, jumped in the car, and came up on the accident.
That's when I bumped into the highway patrol, and they told me that both of them had been hurt.
And they all came running to me and said, "You can't come, you can't see it. It's bad."
And they even wanted me to check and see if that was Don. And they pulled back the sheet, and it was Don. I could tell it was his shirt and stuff like that. And they were putting Joel on the stretcher.
They were going to fly a helicopter in Lifestar and take him on to the hospital.
When I walked in the hospital room, I was put in this little box of a room. And all of a sudden, this man walks in, and he's the one who had to tell me that my husband and son both were dead.
I guess my first reaction was why? Why and how could something like this happen?
I miss him a lot, because he was one of my best friends. And I miss the times we talked about creative ways that we could help God's people serve the Lord. I just miss him as my friend most of all. As my friend.
That morning, Don pulled off to the side of the road and stopped the car and kissed me. And he said, "Suzanne, I'm so glad you're my wife." And then 20 minutes later, the accident happened.
Willie, my heart is just broken for Carolyn and Suzanne and their families.
I know, you think about death as something that happens to older people.
No, it's like they were cheated.
But I think what we need to do here is to stop the tape and you folks discuss why you think bad things happen.
And then we'll come back and discuss it together with our expert, Dr. Norman Wright. Well, Willie and I came up with a lot of ideas.
We did? We did. But what did you folks come up with?
I bet it sounded a lot like this.
First of all, the answer to that to me would be why not?
You don't see the whole picture, and I don't know why he allows it, and I couldn't even begin to second guess God.
It's God's will.
I think the answer is just man is sinful. God gave us a choice not to be sinful, and man chose to sin, so the world's never going to get better.
I believe God allows bad things to happen. I just think it's how we handle them.
I think when you try your best and you try to be honest and good and you try to do what you know the Lord would want you to do, and then things happen that don't go like you have planned, I think it's hard to understand.
There are a lot of opinions out there, and as Pam said, it is difficult to understand.
Well, that's why we need to go to respected author Dr. Norman Wright for some help.
He's written an excellent book called Recovering from the Losses of Life.
And he also writes from personal experience. He and his wife Joyce wrote the book, I'll Love You Forever. It's a really touching story about how they responded to losses in their own family.
And I think it may be the most practical book ever written on how to cope when bad things happen.
The question why has always caused people to struggle, and there are situations that you and I may never understand. But it's all right to ask why. It's a sign of protest, We're trying to make sense of something that seems senseless. But I'd like to give you 3 possible reasons why bad things happen. Number 1, sometimes bad things happen and we suffer just because we're part of the human race. After Adam and Eve sinned in the garden, this became a fallen world. Sin saturated everything. We live in a messed up world. Earlier, we heard how Carolyn lost her husband to lung cancer. We also heard Suzanne tell of the tragic accident which claimed the lives of her husband and her son. Accidents or diseases, they can happen to anyone. It's called random suffering. In fact, Jesus says it rains on the just and on the unjust. And believe me, I'm not callous to the suffering that's going on in these stories. Over 26 years ago, my wife Joyce and I had our second child, and we named him Matthew.
When the doctors came in, they said that Matthew's brain didn't form in some way properly, and that was the reason for the severity of the retardation, and there was brain damage. Matthew's development was at a very, very slow pace. It was almost like, did he really roll over yesterday, because you didn't see it for weeks again, and I was really feeling it with him. But Norm and Cheryl were very busy people. Norm was a youth director, coming in and out, doing things quickly. The whole world seemed like it was going so fast, and I was just wanted to throttle the world and say, slow up. I want you to slow up so Matthew can catch up.
At that time, when Matthew was young, I think we were so involved in just trying to really know what was going on with him and to meet his needs that some of that reality didn't hit me. Because one of the adjustments that I had to come to is to accept the fact that I was the father of a son, and I really didn't know what it was like to be the father of a son.
When Matthew was around 11, I was really knowing frustration. I was trying to be that perfect mother, doing all these things for him. He was still functioning like a 1.5-year-old.
It was like she was caring for a 40 or 50-pound infant. And Joyce was beginning to really wear down, and we knew that there were going to be a lot more limitations that would enter in, and so we felt led to look for a home and found Salem Christian Home in Ontario, California. As the years went on and we saw the amount of care that Matthew had and how he developed in ways that we couldn't even dream of, we were so assured that this was right for our family.
When Matthew was 22, he was suffering a lot with a painful stomach problem.
And just hoping for some sign of improvement. And maybe there was a little voice somewhere within me that was saying, but I didn't want to hear it. Maybe Matthew isn't going to make it. And I remember watching in the next 10 minutes the pulse rate dropping and dropping. And there was such a sense of finality. And we said goodbye to Matthew, and within an hour, he'd really gone into the presence of Jesus. And one of the things that I've learned to share with people since then is that when you have a loved one who's a believer, when they're dying and they've died, and you're saying goodbye to them, remember, they're saying hello to Jesus. Now for a second possible reason that bad things happen. Because we sin or disobey God. That means when we do things that are wrong, we may suffer either physical, mental, or emotional consequences. Let's take a moment and listen as Dave tells his story.
I remember one time I thought for sure I was going to quit drinking because I knew I had been out driving around the night before, and I didn't really remember where, except I knew I'd been out in Arlington. And the next morning on the radio I heard a news item about a hit-and-run driver that had killed a little girl in Arlington. And it scared me so bad I went out and looked at the front of my car to see if there was a dent, and there wasn't. But that scared me, and I thought for sure I'd quit drinking. I probably quit drinking for 2 or 3 days on that one. And I know now that even if it had been me and I had found a dent in the front of my car and some blood, it probably still wouldn't have stopped me. I would have, I'm sure, found a way to live with it because drunks can deaden their senses. I had reached the point where my wife was ready to leave me. She had just given up on me completely. I had lost a couple of jobs due to drinking, either indirectly or directly. Just more and more, my life seemed to revolve around it. There wasn't, just every aspect of my life had something. I was either drinking or going to get drunk or feeling the effects of having been drunk the day before. There were times when my wife didn't know where I was for 2 or 3 days, and sometimes I didn't either. Sometimes I would sort of come to out of a blackout and not even know where I was, not even be sure what city I was in, and not have any money to get home. And it was just a very dark time. At some point I said, Lord, if anyone can lift this curse from me, you're the only one that can do it. I don't recollect if I spoke out loud. Actually, it seems in my own mind that I did, but I don't know that that's true. I certainly knew exactly who it was that was fixing the problem, and it felt like an invisible hand reaching down inside of me and turning a screw or replacing a part or something and just fixing the problem.
Everything in life was falling apart for Dave. He couldn't hold a job. His wife was already packing to leave him. And yet, it's obvious why all of these bad things were happening. Dave's excessive drinking was ruining his life, as well as hurting those around him. The Bible says that God disciplines those He loves and punishes everyone He accepts as a son. God understands that in order for you and I to be useful members of His family, we not only need His love, sometimes we also need His discipline in order to turn things around.
And of course I couldn't walk back to the bedroom where my wife was crying and packing her suitcase and say, well, dear, everything's fine now. Jesus just cured me out in the living room. Any wife of any drunk in the world can tell you exactly what she'd say to a line like that, so I had to prove myself over time. And I think that God was tugging at me all my life, and I just either was not willing to respond or didn't hear. But once He hit me on the head with a brick and got my attention, and I've been listening ever since.
Now for a third possible reason bad things happen: to teach us dependence upon God. In this age of independence, looking out for number one, every man for himself, it is so easy to leave God out of your life, to stop leaning on God and becoming completely self-reliant. Sometimes we all can be guilty of demanding explanations from God, when all God really wants is our faith, our dependence on Him. And in this dependence in God, we find our strength.
It wasn't God putting me through a trial, but rather it was God taking things away. I needed to be cleaned out and show me, I'm not supposed to worry. I'm not supposed to be anxious, and I'm not supposed to fear. And anything that's there is a product of my old sinful nature that God is just taking away bit by bit. So I guess through it all, I just learned that God is the God of peace, and just to trust Him.
More often than not, when things happen to me, I think, well, I must have done something wrong. I feel like I've done something wrong, and so I deserve this. But I still look to the Lord. There's a psalm that David said that says, it is good for me that I was afflicted, that I may learn thy statutes. And I can look at this time and it's actually good for me.
My grandmother got sick, and at the time that she got sick, nobody knew it, and she kept it hidden for about 5 years. And then when we found out about it, it was too late. And I guess what I questioned was, why didn't God give us some type of sign to let us know what was going on with her so we could get some help? But now looking back, it wasn't for us to be. There were some things that we needed to go through that we needed to learn, and we learned from that experience.
You know, when Mother died of cancer 3 years ago, it was such a shock.
Oh, it was. I mean, she was so young and full of life and at the peak of her career.
I know, and we were so close. It was just really hard to get through that. You know, I've always been aware of God's presence, and I've always known that He was so mighty. But I believe it was in that time of my life and in that loss that I felt His presence the strongest, and I knew that I could only draw on Him for my strength.
Well, I watched you getting stronger, but you know, it always brings up the question, if God is so almighty, why couldn't He just create a perfect world without cancer, without disease and suffering?
Well, you know what, Willie? He did. In the beginning, God gave Adam and Eve a very beautiful, perfect world in which to live. But guess what else He gave them? God gave Adam and Eve the freedom to choose, to make their own decisions. Adam and Eve weren't programmed robots. You know the story. God told Adam and Eve not to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, or they would die. She chose the fruit and passed it on to Adam. Adam ate it. And when God confronted Adam, He said, "Oh, it's not my fault. It was Eve." And even today, we are still passing the blame. When things go wrong, we blame our spouse, our boss, our parents, the system, the government, and we even blame God. It's as if God is on trial for all of the terrible things that happen. But a look at Jesus Christ shows that God is not the villain. Jesus Himself chose to be broken in order to identify with hurting mankind. As we encounter people who have been hurt in our broken world, we often will not be able to share our strength with them. Instead, we can share our weakness. We can tell them how we, in our brokenness, were made whole in Jesus Christ. This is the message of redemption.
Well, we've learned why bad things can happen, and we've learned that God originally did create a perfect world.
Yeah, and I really liked what Norman said about, you know, how God didn't create us to be like little robots, but He did give us freedom to make our own choices.
Now, but when bad things happen, how do we cope? Are things ever going to go back to normal? That's the question I'd like to ask Dr. Wright.
Well, okay, but first, let's listen to Larry and Denise Carter. They, like Norman and Joyce, have a son named Matthew.
We wanted to have children when we first got married, and it took several years for us to get Matt.
When we plan on having children, of course none of us plan. To have something like this happen and to not have what's called a normal child, we got very few birth cards. It was almost like we had given birth to a dead child. The first initial thought was, what have I done? And the guilt.
Because you wonder, you know, how bad off is this kid going to be? And so, oh, well, he can open his eyes. That's a step in the right direction.
Matthew is 8 years old, and according to the tests at school they've done, he's functioning between a 2 and a 3-year-old level. When we're around family now and I see another child that's his age, and, you know, they're doing, of course, so much more than he will probably ever do. It is hard. It's real hard.
We get invited to a party where it's bring the kids. That's really difficult to do with Matt because his behavior still isn't appropriate enough to be able to do that.
Except for very, you know, little things. Like if he wants the TV on, if he wants milk, he can communicate those things to us. That's a real struggle because I don't even know when he hurts. I don't know. When I know by his behavior when he hurts, but I don't know where or what to do with it. We get a lot of stares when we're in public. Children stare. Kids make fun of him. Just when I think it's over or I'm handling it and I'm dealing with it, something new comes along. And that's what's hard for me is that it's just, it's going to go on for the rest of his life. It's never going to end because He may never, according to their records or whatever, Matthew may never reach beyond a 4-year-old level. And so we're looking at maybe having a child for the rest of our lives.
I have a special place in my heart for the Carters. Joyce and I know what they're going through, the trials and the triumphs, the birth of a handicapped child, the loss of family through divorce, failure in business, the death of a spouse. All of these situations cause us to experience a special kind of hurt. It's called grief. But there are some people who think that you shouldn't grieve if you have a strong faith. Grieve not, we read in the Bible. But that is only the first half of the verse. The whole verse in 1 Thessalonians says, "Grieve not as those who have no hope." There's a big difference. I want us to look at 4 stages of grief that are very normal for everyone. And remember, people move through stages differently, some rapidly, some slowly, and even from time to time, they have to repeat one of those stages.
It was so hard for me to deal with. He's gone. He's gone. He's gone. I just could not believe he's gone. It's like my mind was just like, it just went on a strike or rest period, I guess, of reality. I just had left reality. It's like nothing else was important to me.
Life gives us all sorts of reasons for hurt, and God made us to be able to handle most of it. But when the pain is overwhelming, we go into shock. We literally feel numb, and that's okay. When bad things happen, we all desire to escape the circumstances, to somehow have it not be true. Because of shock, Carolyn had time to withdraw from the sharpness of the pain of Carl's death. It's like an emotional anesthesia, and that's fine, as long as it doesn't last too long. It's a way to temporarily help us handle the sorrow.
And after a year of coping and trying to handle it myself, I fell apart. I had a friend, a really close friend, that had little ones, you know, but we were about the same age, and I remember telling her some of my ugly feelings. I mean, that's just what they are, but you have to go through those. And I remember she looked at me straight in the eye and she said, "I don't think you love Matthew." And it crushed me, because it wasn't that I didn't love him, it was that I had to accept the fact that I had not had the child that I had dreamed of having.
When you think of grief, you think of being sad, but that's only one of the emotions that will bombard you. You'll go through periods of anger, fear, calm, panic, even loneliness and rejection. And just when you think you've finished one, it comes crashing through again and again and again. You may also feel guilty, even for things that aren't your fault. And it's normal to feel guilty for things like not saying "I'm sorry" before a loved one passes away, or "I love you" to an angry son that leaves home. But beware of false guilt, like feeling responsible for accidents, illness, or like Denise, feeling at fault for Matthew's Down syndrome. Battering yourself with imagined or even real guilt doesn't resolve the problem. It compounds the grief and generates more pain for everyone involved. Once you've recognized and experienced your guilt, you must then let it go. All of these different emotions are part of grief, and it's important to let them out.
I was going through a point of not sleeping. I wasn't eating. I was crying all the time because I felt I just couldn't deal with this. It was just more than I could bear.
This is what depression is like, feeling like there's nothing to life but sadness. For a time, depression can build a wall between you and others, or even between you and God. When the pain was most intense, Carolyn's companion was her tears, and it's good for the tears to fall. Too many people, especially men, cry only on the inside. Well, whenever you cry, please never apologize for your tears, because we never have to apologize for something that is one of God's gifts to all of us.
I draw most of my strength at this point from God, which is the only place that it can ultimately come from. Larry, of course, is a big source of comfort for me because we experience so many of the same things. And I've been blessed with some friends that love me for who I am on the good and the bad days, and they also love my child.
When you go through any traumatic loss, you will change. But while life will never be the same again, that doesn't mean life can't be good. And for Larry, Denise, Matthew, and little sister Christine, life is good. Christians don't detour around grief, but they do have greater resources available to handle it. So I tell you this, grieve not as those who have no hope. Find your hope from the promise in the Bible when Jesus said, I am with you always. And no matter what you're going through, you can face it when you know in your heart that you're not alone.
With only 8 months into this thing, I don't see the whole picture. I know that God's going to make good come, because He already has, and more is coming. I believe that. I trust Him. I think that was just part of my little thing. Trust and obey. Just keep trusting me, and I will make good.
And when I start doing that, I start getting stronger. I start realizing physically I can make it. God is not going to put more on me than I can stand.
Before I go, let me just leave with you a few thoughts about the recovery process. The purpose of grieving is to get beyond the numbness, to say goodbye to whatever we've lost, so we can make the necessary changes and live with this loss in a healthy way. It's a matter of beginning with the question, why did this happen to me? And moving on to, how can I learn through this experience? And how can God be glorified through this? When the how question replaces the why question, you've started to live with the reality of the loss. Let's look at this recovery chart and discover where you may be at this time. Are you walking through the valley, or do you feel like you're climbing back out? Recovery is like a scar from an operation, but it's in such a sensitive place that on occasion you feel the ache again. Like Carolyn and Suzanne, if you've lost a loved one in death and the feelings of loss begin to diminish, please keep in mind that 3 months after the loss, the intensity will return. Then during the next months, when the pain lessens again, be aware that on the first-year anniversary, you may feel the loss as though it just happened. You're not crazy, you're normal. You and I have a choice, not about the difficulties of life, for they're inevitable. Our choice is how we'll respond. I challenge you to place your trust in God, because His grace is the assurance that life can be all right when everything in it is all wrong. He'll give you the power to live life today as if things will be all right tomorrow.
I am so glad we have that assurance because of God's grace. You know, I really got a lot out of the show today. How about you, Willie? What did you learn?
Oh, I get the quiz. Okay. Well, I learned that there are many different reasons that bad things happen.
Like
because we live in a messed up, fallen planet called Earth. Yeah. Or sometimes it's because of our sin, the things that we do wrong.
That's right. And sometimes God just allows bad things to happen to draw us near to Him. So we'll lean on Him.
But the important thing is how we cope when these things happen.
Yeah, going through that grieving, we go through the shock and the sadness and the depression.
And moving on to hope and recovery, because God is with us always.
Oh, God is our hope.
Well, we're out of time. Bye, everybody.
We'll see you next time.